The day everything fell apart. I still remember the sound of that door slamming. It wasn't just a door closing. It was the sound of my life collapsing. You know how people say you can feel your world falling apart in a single moment? They're right, because that day I didn't just lose my home, my business, or my name. I lost myself. My name is Elena, and a year ago I trusted the wrong person with everything I had. And when he took it all, I didn't cry for long. I planned, and I waited. Because if someone can build their empire on lies, I can take it back with truth. But let's not jump ahead. Let me take you back to the moment I realized what he'd done. The moment my world shifted from love to war. The morning it happened, the sun was too bright. You know those mornings that look peaceful but feel wrong? Like the world is pretending everything's fine just to mock you. I was sitting at my kitchen table, coffee untouched, staring at my phone. His last message still glowed on the screen. We'll talk tonight. There's something I need to tell you. I thought he meant a surprise. Maybe good news about our company or about us. We'd been building something together, both in business and in life. At least that's what I believed. By noon, the calls started. First from the bank, then from our clients, then from the lawyer I didn't even know existed until that moment. Each one chipped away at the illusion I'd been living in. Miss Torres, your account access has been transferred. There's a legal claim against your business name. Your partner filed for ownership termination last night. Partner. That word hit me like glass shattering, because partner wasn't just a word. It was my life. His name was Ryan, and for 3 years, I thought he was my everything. We met in the most ordinary way. A client meeting, a handshake, a shared vision. He was confident, charming, full of ideas. And I was so busy believing in us that I didn't see the trap being set. By the time he walked in that night, I already knew. I had gone through the documents, the emails, the bank transfers. He had taken every account, every client, every ounce of my trust, and moved it under his name. I looked at him standing in the doorway, pretending nothing was wrong, and I felt nothing, just silence, cold, heavy silence. He said, "We need to talk." I said, "We don't." His eyes flickered, just for a second. Guilt, fear, maybe both. And then he smiled. That same charming, polished smile that had once made me believe anything was possible. He said, "It's not personal, Elena, it's business. Not personal." Those 2 words burned through me like fire, because it was personal. He had taken my life's work. He had taken our dream, and he'd done it while still pretending to love me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, surrounded by files, emails, and memories that now felt like lies. Every promise, every laugh, every "we'll make it together," all fake. But under the anger, something else was growing. Clarity. He thought he had ended me, but he had only taught me how dangerous I could become when I have nothing left to lose. 3 weeks later, I disappeared. Not literally. I was still there, living in the same city, breathing the same air. But to him I was gone. He thought I had broken down, moved away, started over. That's what people like him assume, that their victims vanish quietly. He didn't know that while he was celebrating his victory, I was learning, watching, and planning every single step to take it all back. Because when someone steals your world, you don't just fight to reclaim it, you learn to rebuild it stronger, smarter and darker than before. People always ask, "Why didn't you go to the police?" As if justice is something you can find on a form or inside a courtroom. No, justice for me was personal. It had to be seen, felt, and delivered, piece by piece. And it all began the day I walked into his office months later, pretending to be someone else. He didn't even recognize me at first. He'd built a new empire using my ideas, my designs, and my name. But he couldn't even see the woman whose life he'd stolen standing right in front of him. That's when I knew I had him exactly where I wanted. But I'll tell you something. Revenge isn't just about payback, it's about transformation. You start out broken, desperate, ready to destroy. But somewhere along the line, you realize you're not the same person anymore. You've become something sharper, colder, unstoppable. That's who I became. And by the time Ryan realized what was happening, it was too late. He thought he'd taken everything from me, but he forgot one thing. You can steal money, fame, even a name. But you can't steal resilience, because I took everything back. And I made sure he'd never forget how. To be continued. When everything still felt right, before everything went wrong, there was peace. It's strange looking back now, how normal life felt before the storm hit. The smell of coffee in the mornings, the sound of Ryan's laughter echoing through the apartment, the excitement of building something we both believed in. Back then, I thought we were unstoppable. I was 29, full of ideas and ambition, and maybe a little naive. After years of working under people who dismissed my voice, I'd finally decided to start something of my own. A small interior design firm called Linea Studio. I wanted it to be more than just a business. I wanted it to be my legacy. Something that said, this is what I built with my own hands. Ryan came into my life when Linea was still just a dream scribbled in my notebook. He was a marketing consultant then, working for one of the firms I'd hired to help design my first campaign. He had that kind of confidence that fills a room, not loud, but commanding. And when he spoke, he made you feel like every word mattered. Our first meeting wasn't special, just business talk and polite smiles. But there was something about the way he looked at me. Not like a client, but like someone who already believed I'd succeed. That look, it was disarming. A few weeks later, he called and said he had an idea to help me rebrand. We met for coffee, and that conversation changed everything. He talked about partnership, about how people like me needed someone who could handle the business side of things, while I focused on the creative. He said, "You have the vision, Elena. You just need someone to make the world see it." I remember laughing, stirring my coffee, pretending to be skeptical. But deep down, I wanted to believe him. I'd been doing everything alone, from designs to accounting to chasing clients who paid late. The idea of someone sharing that weight felt comforting. Within months, Ryan became my partner, first professionally, then personally. We worked side by side, sometimes until dawn, building Linea Studio from a tiny home office into a real brand. We shared ideas, dreams, meals, and eventually a home, and for a while, it was perfect. There's this one memory that still lives rent-free in my mind, the night we signed our first big client. A boutique hotel downtown had chosen us over 5 established firms. We were ecstatic. I remember Ryan spinning me around the studio, laughing. "You see," he said, "we're going to make it big, Elena. You and me, unstoppable." That night, I believed him. We danced barefoot in the empty office, surrounded by sketches and mood boards. In that moment, success wasn't about money. It was about us. That's the cruel thing about betrayal. It doesn't just take away your trust in someone, it takes away the version of you that believed in them. Over the next 2 years, Linea Studio exploded in popularity. We got featured in magazines, invited to design expos, and started hiring staff. Ryan became the face of the company, charming, articulate, confident. He handled clients and investors while I led the creative direction. People loved our story, the power couple who built an empire from scratch. And I loved it too. Until I started realizing that story wasn't entirely mine anymore. Because slowly, the we in our success became more of a he. Ryan started taking more credit, subtly at first, then boldly. At interviews, he'd talk about his vision and his leadership. He started making deals I didn't know about, setting meetings without me. And when I questioned him, he'd smile and say, "Relax, Elena. You don't need to stress about business stuff. You're the artist, let me handle the rest." It sounded caring, until it didn't. I remember one evening, our 2nd anniversary. We were at a restaurant overlooking the city. The waiter had just poured the wine when Ryan got a call. He excused himself and stepped outside. 10 minutes passed, then 20. By the time he came back, he looked distracted, nervous. When I asked if everything was okay, he just said, "It's fine, nothing important." But I saw the name that had flashed on his phone before he walked away. Jared, attorney. I didn't think much of it then. Why would I? We had nothing to hide, or at least that's what I thought. Our relationship began to change after that night. He became distant, not cold but careful. Every time I asked about finances or business documents, he'd wave it off, saying he'd handle it. I was busy managing our growing creative team, so I let him. Looking back, that was my mistake. Trusting too much, questioning too little. Believing that love and business could mix without one poisoning the other. There was one more thing, something I only noticed later. He had started keeping a second phone. At first I assumed it was for work, but then one night it buzzed while he was in the shower. The message on the screen said, "Everything's ready. She won't see it coming." My heart froze. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was about me. Still, I didn't confront him that night. I convinced myself there had to be another explanation. Denial can be such a quiet poison. A few weeks later, he surprised me with a weekend trip, said we needed time away from the stress. We drove up to a lakeside cabin, the kind of place that looks like a postcard. He cooked dinner, lit candles, played my favorite music. For a moment, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe everything was still okay. But when I stepped outside for air later that night, I caught him on the phone again. His voice was low, sharp. I heard him say, "Once the transfer clears, we're done." He didn't notice me standing behind him. He ended the call, turned around and smiled, that same calm, confident smile. "Everything all right?" he asked. I forced a smile back. "Perfect." That night I lay awake pretending to sleep beside him. And I knew something was ending. I just didn't know it was me. Back then, I still believed in forgiveness, in second chances. I believed that people made mistakes out of fear or pressure, not malice. But I was wrong. Sometimes betrayal isn't an accident. It's a plan carefully crafted in silence, and Ryan's plan was already in motion. If I could go back, I'd tell that version of me, the one still holding on to hope, to open her eyes, to trust her instincts, to not confuse love with loyalty, because sometimes the person holding your hand is the same one tightening the noose around your neck. To be continued. The cracks in the perfect picture. They say your gut knows before your heart does. Before your mind catches up, before logic kicks in, your gut whispers, "Something's wrong." That whisper had turned into a scream inside me. After the lake trip, things between Ryan and me looked normal on the surface. We still smiled for photos, showed up to meetings hand in hand, and pretended to be the perfect couple everyone admired. But beneath that surface, everything was rotting. I started noticing things, little inconsistencies that didn't make sense. Invoices missing from the shared drive. Client emails mysteriously redirected to his personal account. Meetings that I was suddenly too busy to attend. Meetings I never knew existed. At first, I told myself it was just stress or maybe my imagination. After all, Ryan was still the man who'd helped me build everything. Why would he sabotage it? But deep down, I already knew the answer, because he wanted it all. One morning, I walked into the office early. Ryan's door was slightly open. He was on a call, pacing. I froze when I heard him say, "Yeah, transfer it under my name for now. She doesn't need to be involved in this one." My chest tightened. My name, my company. He was transferring something, without me. I stayed still, careful not to make a sound. He ended the call and turned around, startled when he saw me. "Elena, you scared me," he laughed too quickly. I asked, "What was that about?" He smiled, that fake polished smile that had once fooled me. "Just a supplier issue," he said. "You don't have to worry about it." But I did, because I'd learned that when someone says you don't have to worry, that's exactly when you should. The next few weeks felt like walking on glass. Every conversation was careful, every smile forced. I started keeping copies of contracts, saving emails, taking notes, little breadcrumbs in case the truth finally surfaced. My assistant, Mia, noticed the tension. She'd been with me since the beginning, loyal, quiet, observant. One afternoon, she came into my office, closed the door, and said, "Can I ask you something? Why is Ryan's name listed alone on the new investor contract?" I froze. "What do you mean alone?" She hesitated, then pulled up the file on her tablet. Sure enough, under authorized representatives, only one name appeared: Ryan Carter. My name wasn't there. On my company's contract, that was the moment I felt the first real crack, the one you can't patch up with excuses or denial. That night, I confronted him. The office was quiet, the city lights painting gold across the glass walls. He was sitting at his desk, scrolling through his phone. I said, "Why is my name missing from the investor agreement?" He looked up slowly, calm as ever. "Elena," he sighed, "it's just paperwork." "You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I snapped. "It's my company. My name should be on every contract." He leaned back, expression unreadable. "Elena, listen. Investors get nervous when there are too many signatures. You're the creative. I'm the business side. It's better this way? Better for who?" I didn't say it out loud, but the words burned in my throat. He reached across the desk, trying to hold my hand. "Hey," he said softly. "We're a team, remember?" I pulled away, because for the first time, I wasn't sure that was true anymore. After that night, he became more careful. He started locking his laptop, changing passwords, taking private calls outside. He claimed it was confidential business. But I could feel it. The distance, the secrecy. Our home felt different too. Cold, quiet. We used to stay up talking about dreams and projects. Now we barely spoke. Every word between us was measured, safe, fake. I started sleeping less, eating less, thinking more. Every moment felt like a puzzle I couldn't solve fast enough. Then came the dinner party, the one that shattered the illusion completely. Ryan had organized a small get-together at our place, a celebration, he called it. "Big news coming soon," he'd said. He invited some of our biggest clients, investors, and even our accountant. I remember standing in the kitchen, pretending to be calm as guests laughed in the living room. Ryan was in his element, charming, effortless, magnetic. He was telling stories, making toasts, stealing the spotlight as always. Then, in the middle of it all, one of the investors, Mr. Patel, clapped Ryan on the back and said, "Congratulations on the merger, man. You really pulled it off." The room went quiet. My wine glass froze halfway to my lips. "Merger?" I turned to Ryan. "What merger?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't miss a beat. "Oh, it's nothing finalized yet," he said quickly, smiling. "Just some early discussions." But I saw the flicker in his eyes. He was lying. After the guests left, I pressed him again. He brushed it off, saying it was just business talks. But that night, when he fell asleep, I went through his briefcase. What I found made my stomach turn. Contracts, emails, bank drafts, all showing one thing. Ryan had been negotiating a full acquisition of Linea Studio to a corporate firm. The deal would transfer everything under his name. I wasn't just being pushed out. I was being erased. I sat there in the dark, papers scattered across the floor, shaking. He'd planned it for months, maybe even years. Every step, every business move, every promise of we, all leading to this moment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake him up and demand to know why. But I didn't, because in that moment something inside me changed. The fear, the confusion, it all burned away. And what replaced it was colder, sharper. I whispered to myself, if he wants to take everything from me, then he'll see what happens when I take it back. From that night on, I stopped being the woman he could manipulate. I started paying attention, quietly, strategically. I copied files, backed up data, reached out to old contacts, and started preparing. Mia helped me discreetly. She didn't know everything, but she trusted me enough to follow my instructions without asking too many questions. I started documenting every lie, every transaction, every forged signature. Piece by piece, I was building my case, not for the police, not for a courtroom, but for the moment when I'd make him face what he'd done. He thought I was still the same Elena, the trusting, forgiving partner who'd always believe him. But what he didn't know was that the woman sitting across from him at dinner, smiling politely, was already planning his downfall. That was when I realized betrayal doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in small, quiet cracks, in the silences between conversations, in the documents you don't read, in the passwords you don't ask for, and once those cracks appear, no amount of love can fill them again. The night he took everything. They say you never forget the exact moment your heart breaks, not the sound, not the air, not even the way the light hits the room. For me, it happened on a Thursday night, a quiet, ordinary evening, until it wasn't. It began with a phone call. Mia's voice trembled on the other end. Elena, she whispered, I don't know how to say this, but you need to come to the office. Now. Something in her tone told me this wasn't just about business. I arrived 20 minutes later. The office was dark except for the faint glow from the conference room. Inside, Mia sat pale-faced, clutching a folder. She slid it across the table toward me without saying a word. Inside were documents, final sale agreements, signatures, and transfers. All stamped and dated, and right there, printed in bold at the top of every page. Ryan Carter, sole owner of Linea Studio. My breath caught. My name was gone, erased. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was done. How did he do this? I whispered. Mia's eyes filled with tears. He filed the documents 3 days ago. He used your digital signature, Elena. The system thinks you approved it. I felt the world tilt beneath me. He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd forged my name, my trust, my identity. For a few seconds, everything went silent. I couldn't even hear my own heartbeat. It felt like my entire life, every dream, every sacrifice, had just been deleted. I stumbled into my office, the one I'd designed with so much pride. The soft lighting, the sketches on the wall, the plant Ryan gave me on our first anniversary. It all felt like a lie now. I sank into the chair, shaking. That's when I heard the door open behind me. Ryan. He walked in like he owned the place, because technically, he now did. Elena, he said calmly, I was going to tell you tomorrow. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. Tell me what, I said. That you forged my signature? That you stole my company? He sighed, almost like he was tired. Elena, listen, it's not what you think. Oh, really? I snapped. Because it looks exactly like betrayal to me. He stayed quiet, hands in his pockets, eyes cold. Then he said something I'll never forget. It's business, Elena. You're too emotional for this world. You build things with your heart. I build them with my head. That's why I'll always win. For a moment, I just stared at him. This was the man I'd shared everything with. My dreams, my bed, my soul. And he was looking at me like I was just a stepping stone. Was any of it real? I asked softly. He hesitated, then said, Of course it was. But things change. That hurt more than any lie. Because it wasn't anger in his voice. It was indifference. He wasn't even sorry. I stood up, forcing myself to breathe. You could have had success with me, I said quietly. But you chose to destroy me instead, he shrugged. Elena, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Take some time off. Maybe start something new. You'll bounce back. You always do. That was the moment I realized. He didn't just steal my company. He stole my power, or at least he thought he did. I walked past him, out of the office, into the cold night air. The city lights blurred through my tears. Every corner of that street had a memory. The cafe where we brainstormed ideas, the building we toured for our first office, the park where he once promised me forever. Now it all felt poisoned. I went home that night and sat in silence. No music, no light, just darkness and the sound of my own breathing. You never really understand betrayal until you realize the person who held you closest was holding a knife the whole time. Over the next few days, the news spread fast. Ryan Carter takes full control of Linea Studio. His smiling face appeared on blogs, magazines, even television. They called him a visionary. They called him the genius behind our success. And me? I was the forgotten name, the woman who stepped down. I watched from the shadows as everything I built was claimed by the man who had destroyed me. My phone buzzed constantly, journalists, friends, former clients. Everyone wanted to know what happened. I ignored them all, because what could I say? That the man I loved had stolen everything? That I'd been too blind to see it coming? That would make me a fool, and I refused to be his victim twice. A week later, I received a message from him. Short, cruel. Hope you're doing okay. No hard feelings, right? I stared at those words for a long time. No hard feelings. He took my company, my reputation, my future. And he wanted me to pretend it didn't hurt. That was when something inside me hardened. The pain didn't fade. It transformed. It became fuel. The next morning, I walked back into the office building. Not as the owner, not even as an employee. just as someone who refused to disappear quietly. Ryan wasn't there, but his new assistant stopped me at the front desk. "I'm sorry, Miss Torres," she said awkwardly. "Mr. Carter asked that you don't come by anymore." I smiled, not the kind he was used to. Cold, controlled. "Tell him," I said. "I don't take orders from thieves." And I walked out. For the first time since it all happened, I felt something close to clarity. The shock was gone. The heartbreak was gone. All that remained was purpose. He had taken everything, my name, my company, my pride. But what he didn't realize was that by taking it all, he'd given me something far more powerful, a reason. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman staring back wasn't the same Elena who once believed in him. She wasn't soft anymore. She wasn't afraid. She was patient, calculating, determined, and she whispered the words that would guide her every move from that day on. "He took everything from me, so I'll take it back." That was the true beginning, not of my downfall, but of my rise, because when someone pushes you to the edge, you either fall or you learn how to fly. To be continued. Revenge plan. The art of taking it back. When you lose everything, you learn two things fast: who you are and who they really were. In the weeks after Ryan stole my company, I didn't sleep much. My mind replayed every meeting, every laugh, every late night at the office, searching for the moment I should have seen it coming. But buried beneath the pain, something else began to rise, a calm, steady fire. He thought he'd written my ending. But he just handed me the pen. The reset. I started small. I disconnected from everyone, the industry friends, the former employees, even Mia. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want Ryan to know anything about what I was doing. I sold my apartment, moved into a small loft across town, and vanished from social media. To the world I was broken, a cautionary tale. And that was exactly what I wanted them to believe. I spent days reviewing old files, blueprints, project drafts, financial records. Every pattern, every deal we made, every person who'd ever done business with Linea Studio. I knew Ryan, his habits, his weaknesses, his ego. And ego, I realized, was his softest spot. Ryan loved control. He needed to be the smartest man in the room, the one everyone admired. If I could make him feel untouchable, I could make him careless, and careless people make mistakes. The new identity. My first move was to rebuild, not publicly, but quietly. I rebranded myself under a new consulting name, ET Design Strategies. Just initials, no face, no story, through an anonymous profile. I began advising small startups online, the kind of businesses Ryan used to ignore because they weren't big enough. I offered them marketing plans, investor introductions, even design frameworks. And slowly, my quiet name, ET, started circulating in Ryan's circles. Within months, I was consulting companies that he was trying to acquire. They didn't know it was me, but I knew exactly who they were. One evening, I received an invitation that made me stop mid-sentence. The annual Creators Summit, hosted by Linea Studio. Ryan's face was printed across the top of the flyer, smiling, polished, confident. The theme? Rebuilding the future. The irony almost made me laugh. That night, I decided I'd go. Not as Elena Torres, but as someone new. I contacted an old acquaintance from the fashion world, a stylist named Clara who owed me a favor. Within days, she transformed me completely. New hair, new wardrobe, new energy. Not the soft, trusting designer Ryan once knew, but someone sharper, someone untouchable. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the woman who'd been betrayed. I saw the woman who would win, the encounter. The night of the summit shimmered with glass and ambition. Cameras flashed, music pulsed. Every corner of the room whispered deals and secrets. I stepped in wearing confidence like armor. My heels clicked across the marble floor, deliberate, measured, unshakable. Ryan was across the room, surrounded by investors. The same investors who once praised our vision. He was laughing, glass of champagne in hand. And then he saw me. For a brief moment, his expression flickered. Recognition, confusion, then control. Elena? He said, walking closer. I smiled. You must have me mistaken. Name's Elle. He blinked, thrown off by the new look, the new tone. I watched him study me, searching for the cracks. But there were none. Right, he said finally, smirking. You remind me of someone I used to know. Hopefully someone you treated well, I replied. Taking a sip of champagne, he laughed, but uneasily. That night, I spoke to everyone, investors, journalists, creators, dropping subtle, polished insights. Every word designed to plant seeds of doubt about Ryan's leadership, not lies. Just truth, framed carefully. Linea's growth has been impressive, I told one group. Though it's interesting, companies that grow too fast often forget who built their foundation. They nodded, and I smiled. The quiet war in the following weeks, my plan unfolded like chess. I started consulting with 3 of Linea's biggest suppliers, under my alias, of course. I gave them new pricing models, better logistical strategies. When they tried to pitch to Ryan, their offers suddenly outperformed his projections. He didn't know why his numbers didn't match. He didn't know that I was behind every new competitor rising in his shadow. Then came the real blow. I contacted 2 of our former clients, ones Ryan had dismissed as too small. I offered to help them rebrand, relaunch, and compete directly against Linea's upcoming campaign. The launch date was set, the same week as Linea's anniversary. The trigger 3 months later, Linea's grand event took place, Ryan's biggest project yet. A design reveal meant to secure a massive investor deal. I was there, sitting quietly in the back row, unseen but watching everything. The lights dimmed. Ryan took the stage, smiling like a king addressing his empire. Tonight, he said, we celebrate innovation, creativity, and vision. But as he clicked the remote to unveil the project, the screen flickered. Then it glitched, and then it froze completely. Gasps rippled through the audience. I knew that glitch. It wasn't an accident. His new tech vendor had pulled out last minute, because they'd signed with me. Ryan's calm facade cracked. His speech stumbled. The investors exchanged looks, and as his entire presentation collapsed before the crowd, my phone buzzed with a single message from one of my clients. It's live. We launched first. Their new campaign, sleek, elegant, and revolutionary, went public just as Ryan's screen went dark. The turning point I didn't celebrate, not yet. Revenge, I learned, isn't about destroying someone in one blow. It's about watching them destroy themselves, piece by piece. Ryan called me later that week. He didn't know how I was connected, but he sensed it. Elena, he said, voice low, almost shaking. Are you behind this? I paused. Behind what? You know exactly what I mean. The clients, the suppliers, everything's falling apart. I smiled to myself. Maybe the universe is just balancing things out. He exhaled sharply. You don't understand, Elena. You're hurting yourself too. The industry's small. This will affect your reputation too. I laughed softly. You already took my reputation, Ryan. You can't take what's already gone. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. For the first time, he was the one losing control. After the call ended, I stared at my reflection, calm, composed, and stronger than ever. I wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning, because taking back what was mine wasn't just about revenge. It was about reminding him, and the world, who really built it all, to be continued. The night I took it all back, there's a strange calm that comes right before justice hits. It's not rage anymore. It's not even excitement. It's peace, the kind that comes when you know everything is finally falling into place. I'd spent months planning this moment. Every piece on the board was set. Every person Ryan once controlled was now either turning away from him or quietly aligning with me. He still didn't know how deep it went. He still believed he could fix everything, that his charm, his lies, and his money would keep his empire standing. But what he didn't realize was that the empire had already cracked. The final stage, it started with an email. From an anonymous sender, ET Design Audit. Inside, a full report detailing discrepancies in Linea Studios' financial statements. It was factual, evidence-based, undeniable, and every number came from his own records. The report landed on the desks of investors, the board, and the press. Within 24 hours, questions started flooding in. Who approved these transactions? Why were there unaccounted expenses? Where were the original design files? And why did they match those of a smaller firm called ET Design Strategies? Ryan didn't know yet that ET was me, but he was about to find out. The event that week, Linea Studio hosted a live investor conference, a last-ditch effort to stabilize the company's crumbling image. Ryan was desperate to prove control, to show that everything was under management. He invited media, shareholders, clients, everyone, and I was there too. Front row, he didn't expect me to come, but when I walked in, heads turned. Cameras caught the moment. The woman he'd erased had returned, poised, silent, unbroken. Ryan froze for half a second, but then quickly regained his smirk. "Elena," he said into the mic, trying to sound casual. "Nice of you to join us. Everyone, meet my former partner, the creative mind behind our early success." The audience applauded politely. They didn't know the storm that was about to hit. He began his presentation, voice smooth, gestures confident, just like always. But I noticed the sweat glistening at his temple. He was trying too hard to look calm. Midway through his speech, the main screen behind him glitched. Once, twice. Then the slides changed, but not to what he prepared. The screen displayed a series of files. Email chains, contracts, forged signatures, everything he'd used to take Linea from me. The crowd gasped. Ryan's face turned white. He looked at the technician, shouting, "Turn it off! That's not part of the presentation." But the feed continued. The next slide displayed my original company registration, my name clearly listed as co-founder and owner. Then came a clip. A recording of a meeting between Ryan and a former investor, one he didn't know had been archived. Ryan's voice, clear as day. "She won't notice the transfer until it's too late. Once her name's off, it's all mine." The room erupted in shock. He turned toward me, eyes blazing. "You did this," he hissed. I stood slowly. "No, Ryan, you did this. I just made sure the truth was seen." Security guards rushed toward the stage. But the investors raised their hands. "Let her speak." So I did. "I built Linea with everything I had," I said, my voice steady, echoing through the hall. "I poured my time, my dreams, my trust into it. And Ryan Carter repaid that trust by stealing it. But here's the thing about truth. You can hide it for a while, but eventually it finds its way back." I turned to the audience, scanning the faces that once looked past me. "For months you all believed he was the genius behind every success. But those designs, those strategies, those campaigns, they weren't his. They were mine, and tonight you've seen the proof." Ryan tried to interrupt, but the mic in his hand cut off. Someone backstage had muted him. The collapse within minutes, journalists started typing furiously. Cameras flashed. Investors whispered. Ryan's empire was unraveling in real time. He turned toward me, desperate now. "Elena, we can fix this," he pleaded quietly, off mic. "You don't want to ruin us both." I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who once stood beside me, laughing, dreaming, promising forever. Now all I saw was a stranger who thought betrayal had no cost. "There's no us, Ryan," I said softly. "There never was. There was you, and there was the truth, and the truth finally won." Security escorted him out after that, not at my command, but at the board's. They'd seen enough. I walked out of the hall slowly, every step echoing with years of buried pain finally lifting off my shoulders. Outside, the night air was cool. The city lights shimmered like they were celebrating quietly with me. Mia was waiting by the car. She hadn't known the full plan. I'd kept her safe from it. When she saw me, her eyes widened. "You did it," she whispered. I smiled, a tired but real smile. "No," I said. "I just took back what was already mine." The aftermath, the fallout was brutal. For him. By morning, headlines filled every major outlet. Ryan Carter exposed for fraudulent takeover. Co-founder reclaims Linea Studio after proof of deception. The company froze his accounts. The board removed him within 48 hours, and the next week they called me. "Elena, the chairwoman said over the phone. "We'd like to offer you reinstatement, full creative control. The studio needs you." I took a deep breath. It was everything I thought I wanted, but something in me had changed. "I appreciate it," I told her, "but I don't want to rebuild what he broke. I'm building something new." And that was the truth. The closure, a few days later, I walked into the empty Linea office one last time. The walls were bare. The energy felt cold, mechanical, lifeless. I placed my hand on the conference table where it all began. "So much started here," I whispered, "and now it ends here." As I turned to leave, I noticed Ryan's old desk drawer slightly open. Inside was a photo of us, smiling, young, full of dreams. For a moment, I felt the old ache tug at my chest. But I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't need to. Revenge isn't about hatred. It's about closure. I left the photo there, closed the drawer, and walked out for the last time. That night, as I stood on my apartment balcony watching the skyline, I realized something powerful. He had taken everything, but he could never take me. My ideas, my strength, my resilience, those were mine all along. And now, I finally understood that the real revenge wasn't destroying him. It was rebuilding myself to be continued. Resolution. When the dust finally settled. After the storm ends, there's always silence. The kind that feels too big, too wide, like the world is catching its breath after everything it's seen. That's how it felt in the days that followed. No chaos, no calls, no headlines, just quiet. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread. No unfinished plans, no desperate need to prove anything, just peace. But peace is strange when you've lived on adrenaline for so long. It doesn't come easy. You have to learn how to trust it. Starting over, I left the city, packed my things, gave up the loft, and drove until the skyline disappeared in the rearview mirror. I ended up in a small coastal town 3 hours away, a place where no one knew my name, where the air smelled like salt and new beginnings. I rented a tiny studio apartment above a bookstore, the kind with creaky floors, uneven windows, and shelves that looked like they'd seen 1,000 lives before mine. For the first few days, I didn't do much. Just walked, breathed, and let myself feel the weight of nothingness. I had spent so many years building, fighting, surviving, that I had forgotten what it meant to simply be. One morning, I sat by the ocean with my sketch pad, something I hadn't touched since before the betrayal. For months, I couldn't draw without seeing him in every line. But that morning, as the waves curled and broke before me, my hand moved again. The first sketch wasn't perfect, shaky, uneven, uncertain, but it was mine. And for the first time, I smiled. Unseen messages. It didn't take long for people to find out what happened to Ryan. He disappeared from the spotlight entirely. No interviews, no statements, just silence. But every now and then I'd get a message from someone in the industry. "Elena, I just wanted to say, you inspired a lot of us." Or, "You reminded us that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it rebuilds." Those messages meant more than any headline ever did. One day, I got an email that stopped me in my tracks. Subject line, "I'm sorry." It was from Ryan. I hesitated before opening it, my fingers hovering over the mouse. Curiosity won. "Elena, I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that losing everything showed me what I really destroyed. Not the company, not the reputation, but the person who believed in me when no one else did. I hope you're at peace, Ryan." I read it twice, then closed my laptop quietly. I didn't reply, because some stories don't need an ending. They just need to be left where they broke. The new chapter months passed. And somewhere along the way, I realized I'd built something new without even meaning to. My consulting brand, ET Design Strategies, started attracting more clients, not because of revenge or exposure, but because people respected my work. My real work, startups reached out, nonprofits, independent creators, people who built things with heart, just like I once did. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about purpose. I began mentoring young designers, people like I used to be, full of dreams and too much trust. I taught them what no one taught me, how to protect their vision, How to build with both passion and caution. How to never let someone else write their story. Every time I watched one of them succeed, it felt like healing another part of myself. Mia's visit one evening. As the sun melted into the water, I heard a knock on my door. It was Mia, holding 2 cups of coffee and that same mischievous smile I'd missed so much. "I told myself I'd find you eventually," she said. I laughed. "Guess you did." We sat by the window talking for hours. About everything. The company, the chaos, the future. At one point, she looked at me and said softly, "You know, you could have destroyed him completely. Legally, financially, everything. But you didn't," I shrugged, "because that's not who I am." "I didn't need to destroy him. I just needed to end his hold on me." Mia nodded slowly. "That's real power, you know, knowing when to stop." Her words stayed with me long after she left. Closure. That night, I walked along the beach under a full moon. The tide washed over my feet, cold but comforting. I thought about everything. The rise, the betrayal, the revenge, the silence after. And I realized something I wish I'd known earlier. Sometimes life takes everything from you, so you can finally see what you were meant to rebuild. Revenge gave me back my strength. But forgiveness, quiet, private forgiveness, gave me peace. Not forgiveness for him, but for myself, for trusting too much, for breaking down, for thinking I wasn't enough, because now I knew better. Looking forward a year later, ET Design Strategies became something much bigger than I'd ever imagined. Not just a consulting firm, a collective, a space where creative women could build, protect, and grow their ideas safely. We called it Backline, a name that reminded me of my own story, how sometimes the strongest things aren't in the spotlight, but quietly working behind it. And every time a new client asked how it all began, I'd smile and say, "It started when someone took everything from me, and I learned how to take it back." That's the thing about betrayal. It feels like an ending, but it's really just a plot twist. The story doesn't end when you fall. It ends when you decide to rise. Moral and reflection. So if you're listening to this, if someone's taken something from you, lied to you, made you feel small, remember this. You don't need to scream for revenge. You don't need to burn everything to the ground. You just need to stand up quietly and build again, because real power isn't taking something from someone. It's taking yourself back. The power of taking yourself back. Soft ambient music fades in, the sound of waves, quiet wind, slow piano. They say revenge is sweet. But I've learned that it's not the sweetness you remember. It's the silence that comes after. That moment when the noise fades and you're left standing in the wreckage of what was. Finally free. Freedom doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like peace. Sometimes it looks like walking away without needing to look back. When Ryan betrayed me, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never breathe without that ache in my chest, never trust, never create again. But pain has a strange way of teaching you who you really are. It strips everything away. Your illusions, your comfort, your certainty, until all that's left is truth. And that truth is unshakable. The truth is, he didn't take everything from me. He only took what was temporary, the title, the company, the spotlight. But what was permanent, my vision, my strength, my voice, those were mine all along. He couldn't steal that even if he tried. There's a quote I once read, "They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds." I used to think it was just a pretty metaphor. Now I understand it, because when someone tries to destroy you, they're not ending your story. They're giving it a new beginning. Every loss plants something new. Every betrayal builds a sharper sense of truth. Every ending teaches you how to write the next chapter differently. I didn't win by destroying him. I won by rebuilding myself. Revenge gave me clarity, but forgiveness gave me peace. And the greatest revenge of all is living without fear, because fear of losing, of trusting, of being broken again, that's what keeps people stuck in the shadows of their own pain. But once you face it, once you realize you survived the worst, nothing else can own you. Now, when I wake up in the morning and the sun touches my window, I think of the woman I was, the one who believed in love more than logic, who thought loyalty meant protection. I don't hate her anymore. I thank her, because without her, I'd never have found the woman I became, the one who doesn't wait to be chosen, the one who doesn't need to be saved, the one who knows that silence can be louder than revenge. Soft piano rises, slow, cinematic crescendo. If you're listening to this and you've been broken, betrayed, or left behind, remember, your story isn't over. It's just beginning. Don't rush to destroy them. Rebuild you. Don't seek to take from others. Take yourself back. Because one day, when you've rebuilt from the ashes, when you stand stronger and calmer than ever before, they'll look at you and realize they didn't break you. They built the version of you they could never handle. When people ask me now what happened, I don't tell them about the lies or the pain or the betrayal. I just smile and say, he took everything from me, so I took myself back.